Then the third issue is fraud on voting day and at the ballot booth, but the bigger question that's always in the back of minds of people in
the House coming
is,
back in for work on 7 bills. You can find the rest of this conversation online at the C-SPAN video library. A number of bills on the House floor dealing with veterans benefits and ATM fee disclosure.
Thaddeus G. McCotter.
Under Clause 5D of Rule 20, the Chair announces to the House that, in light of the resignation of the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. McCotter, the whole number of the House is 432. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the Chair will postpone further proceedings today on motions to suspend the rules on which a recorded vote or the yeas and nays are ordered, or on which the vote incurs objection under Clause 6 of Rule 20. Record votes on postponed questions will be taken later. For what purposes does the gentleman from Utah seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House suspend the rules and pass Bill H.R. 4155 as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 4155, a bill to direct the head of each federal department and agency to treat relevant military training as sufficient to satisfy training or certification requirements for federal licenses.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Chaffetz, and the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Connolly, each will control 20 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Utah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials under the bill for the bill under consideration.
Without objection.
We're here today to discuss H.R. 4155, the Veterans Skills to Jobs Act, introduced by Mr. Denham of California. I really appreciate the approach that this is taking with jobs in the economic environment as such. This is a common sense, good measure. I think it's widely supported on both sides of the aisle, and I'd urge my colleagues to pass it. Essentially, H.R. 4155 ensures that applicants for federal licenses receive credit for relevant training completed while serving as a member of the armed forces. While most licenses are issued by states, the federal government does grant a number of licenses, most notably in the aerospace, communications, and maritime sectors. After 40 months of unemployment rate above 8%, we must do more to help create jobs. With the unemployment rate for post-9/11 veterans at 12.7%, we must better support our veterans as they transition to the civilian workforce. In April, the Defense Business Board issued a report recommending federal agencies review military training as a qualification for their respective program requirements. H.R. 4155 is in line with this recommendation. The bill provides some certainty to veterans during their transition from military by ensuring their training is taken into account when applying for federal licenses. The bill does not infringe on the jurisdiction of the licensing agency. Instead, it leaves the agency free to determine whether military training is sufficient to meet license requirements. H.R. 4155 will reduce the licensing burden for qualified veterans, enabling them to more quickly re-enter the workforce and ease their transition to civilian life. Again, I appreciate the work of Mr. Denham and others, Mr. Walz, in a bipartisan way to introduce this bill, and I'd urge my colleagues to support it. With that, I'll reserve the balance of our time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong support of H.R. 4155 and yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
I want to thank the sponsors of H.R. 4155, especially Mr. Denham and Mr. Walz, for their dedicated service to our nation while in uniform and for their commitment to supporting our veterans here in Congress. I deeply value and appreciate the sacrifices made by the men and women of our armed forces, and I'm proud to represent thousands of them who reside in the 11th District of Virginia, a district that takes military service very seriously and holds it in high esteem. I believe we here in Congress have a sacred duty, Mr. Speaker, to provide for their well-being. For that reason, I strongly support efforts to expedite the transition of our nation's warriors to civilian life. We need to do all we can to help these dedicated veterans find gainful employment. It's a shameful fact that the men and women who volunteered to safeguard our country are having so much trouble finding steady, good-paying jobs. A double-digit unemployment rate for post-9/11 veterans, almost double the national average, is simply unacceptable. Transitioning to civilian life is difficult under any circumstance. However, the hardship is compounded when veterans cannot easily translate their military skills into careers in the federal or private sector workforce through no fault of their own. In addition, there's the task of educating employers to better understand that so much of military training is readily transferable to the civilian job requirements in the private sector. We need to do better for our veterans, and I believe H.R. 4155 is a strong step in that direction. It would require each agency with federal licensing authority to treat relevant military training as sufficient to satisfy training or certificate requirements for federal licenses. This will help our returning service members to get credit for their military training towards a license which they can use to get federal or private sector jobs and reintegrate into civilian life. The federal government, private sector employers, and our economy will benefit by being able to take full advantage of their talent and unique skills and experience as veterans. Mr. Speaker, the Senate has already passed an identical version of this non-controversial but important bill by unanimous consent. I urge all members to support this bill that will enable our nation's veterans to get back to work, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves his time. The gentleman from Utah is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to yield as much time as he may consume to the distinguished gentleman from California, the sponsor of the bill, Mr. Denham.
The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to support legislation I authored, H.R. 4155, the Veterans Skills to Jobs Act. America is blessed with the strongest, most capable, and professional military in the world. Unfortunately, for many of our veterans, transitioning from the service means a battle with joblessness. And as my friend from Utah explained, the unemployment rate is set at 12.7%. But for our young veterans, it's 29.1% for those that are under the age of 25. The federal government has invested in our servicemen with some of the most unique, expensive, and valued training in the world. These brave young men and women have put their lives on the line and deserve to be able to use this training when they come back home. With 200,000 servicemen and women transitioning to the civilian workforce each year, we must ensure that they're able to find jobs when they come home. I personally dealt with this issue when I left active duty as a crew chief. Though I had training on the most sophisticated aircraft in the world, to work on less sophisticated aircraft in the civilian side, it would have taken me 3 years of training after I left active duty. And in my conversations with Mr. Walls from Minnesota, some of the challenges that his veterans have seen in Minnesota had to go through the same state licensing procedure. It's time to say enough is enough. If you've had the best training in the world, you ought to be able to get the best jobs in the world. And this body ought to make sure that that certification, that licensure is a seamless process. If you leave active duty today, you ought to have work tomorrow in the private sector utilizing that very same training. This legislation not only mirrors similar efforts on the state level, but follows the recommendation of the Defense Business Board of the Department of Defense that issued a report calling for exactly this same type of reform. The Veterans Skills to Job Act would help fix this problem, and I'm glad to see that both chambers of Congress working together in a bipartisan fashion to accomplish this very same goal. Helping our returning veterans find jobs is not the concern of one party or one body of Congress. The Senate adopted this matter unanimously last week before we left break, and it's time that this body do the same. Again, I want to thank Mr. Walls of Minnesota for his hard work on this effort, for the bipartisan effort. He and I have been in close communication this entire 112th Congress in making sure that this comes to reality, as well as Mr. Nelson, Senator Nelson from Florida offering the companion bill in the Senate. It's time to make sure that we have a bipartisan and quick solution to this issue. And I also want to thank the American Legion, of which I'm a member of. They have worked tirelessly in both bodies, as well as from a grassroots perspective across the nation, working with many other service organizations to actually make this a reality. Now it's time that this body does its job and pass this important measure, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman reserves his time. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to my good friend and colleague from Minnesota, Mr. Waltz, the co-sponsor of this legislation.
The gentleman from Minnesota is recognized for 3 minutes.
His support of this bill and other veterans issues. First of all, I'd like to thank the gentleman from California. Mr. Denham's service in uniform to this nation is to be commended, and his service to our veterans has been unwavering. He's right. We've worked on this a long time, and I had the opportunity on numerous occasions to travel downrange to visit our veterans, the last one with my good friend from California, Mr. Denham, and the care and concern that he showed listening to these veterans of what they need, listening to them talk about this, and one of the things on the mind of our veterans as they're fighting downrange, defending our freedoms and doing what's asked of them is, how are they going to be able to take care of their family when their service obligation ends? And so Mr. Denham came back and working and reaching across the aisle and working over in the Senate, crafted a piece of legislation that's not only morally the right thing to do, taking care of our veterans. You hear a lot about the 99% and the 1%. There's truth in that. 99% of us enjoy the benefits of security and national defense, while 1% provide it. And so the moral obligation of providing this is pretty much unquestioned. But the thing that I think Mr. Denham looked into on this is making sure the economic impact was felt also. And on this, I think this is very important to keep in mind. We spend $140 billion a year training our military. That's an investment into those folks. When they finish their career, whether it be a stint of 4 years or whether it's a 20 or 30-year career, they come out with incredible skill training, with incredible professionalism, and they are a very mature workforce. Why would we not want to get our best and brightest back working in the economy? These are our entrepreneurs. These are the folks who can get things done. This piece of legislation was crafted in such a way to do exactly that. Implementation of concurrent credentialing has no undue burden on the military nor in its readiness. In fact, opportunities for credentialing will be a selling point for our military. You can come out and move directly into a job as an aviation mechanic or whatever it may be. I'd like to just mention just quickly here in my state of Minnesota, an average active duty service member with an aviation mechanic or avionics occupation will have attended over 18 months of training and had a minimum of 4 years of practical experience. A certified aviation maintenance technician school costs $20,000 a year. So we've invested, we have a trained mechanic, but we're going to have them come back, have them be unemployed, have them try and use their GI Bill, which is federal dollars, to get the very same credentialing that they had when they left at a time when we need to put them into the job. So in Minnesota, at Three River Falls is the only place you can get this. We're asking folks to line up and get positions that they don't have enough spots for. It makes no sense. So I'd like to thank the gentleman for a common sense piece of legislation, for a piece of legislation that addresses both our moral and our economic needs. And I'd also like to say, Mr. Speaker, as the members in this House see, we can work together to solve problems. We can understand, and on this issue, the sacrifice that our service members made so that we could have the honor and the privilege of self-government and stand here and debate the country's business. We owe it to them to conduct ourselves in a manner that's reflective of their sacrifice and service, and I'd like to congratulate the gentleman from California for bringing that type of camaraderie, that type of can-do spirit, and that type of willingness to compromise to get things done for the good of the soldiers. And with that, I urge my colleagues, support this piece of legislation. Let's get it passed, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Does the gentleman reserve? Gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from Utah is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I have no additional speakers at this time, but we'll continue to reserve.
The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, with that, let me just urge my colleagues, in the spirit of bipartisanship, to come together and support our veterans and to make opportunity more available. It is, as I said, a sacred duty, it seems to me, that those men and women who are willing to put on that uniform and serve their country ought to be treated with respect and dignity and a job when they come home. And this bill will go a long way to doing that. And with that, I yield back the balance of our time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from Utah is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, this is a good common sense bipartisan bill. I appreciate both these gentlemen who spoke here earlier for their work on this, Mr. Denham and Mr. Walz. The Veterans Skills to Jobs Act, H.R. 4155, it makes sense. It's good government. It's what our troops deserve. And I encourage all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support this and send a strong message to the military and to the private sector to let them know that we support them, that the work that they do, the skills that they learn are of value. And that they are needed within the workforce as a whole, and that the skills and the training they get, the best in the world, means something, and we can bypass this licensing issue and get them back to work sooner rather than later. With that, I'll yield back.
The gentleman yields back his time. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 4155 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, two-thirds being in the...
Mr. Speaker, I'd ask for the yeas and nays.
Two-thirds being in the affirmative. From Utah.
Mr. Speaker, I ask for the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. All those in favor of taking this vote by the yeas and nays will rise and remain standing till counted. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 4114.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 340, H.R. 4114, a bill to increase, effective as of December 1, 2012, rates of compensation for veterans with service-connected disabilities and the rates of dependency and indemnity compensation for the survivors of certain disabled veterans and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Miller, and the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Brown, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I might consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Again, thank you for the recognition. As chairman of the committee of this House Committee on Veterans Affairs, I rise in support of H.R. 4114, the Veterans Compensation Cost of Living Adjustment Act of 2012. This critically important piece of legislation authorizes a cost of living increase for disabled veterans in receipt of disability compensation payments from VA and veterans' clothing allowance payments and other compensation for survivors of veterans who die as a result of their service to this country. Now, the amount of the increase will be determined by the Consumer Price Index, which also controls the cost of living adjustment for Social Security beneficiaries. I want to thank my colleague from New Jersey, Mr. Runyon, the chairman of the Subcommittee on Disability Assistance and Memorial Affairs, for introducing this important piece of legislation and for working with me and the ranking member to move it forward. I want to urge all my colleagues to support H.R. 4114, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves his time. The gentlelady from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume. I wholeheartedly support the Veterans Compensation Cost of Living Adjustment Act of 2012, H.R. 4114. While this committee does not control the amount of the COLA, it is critical that we pass the bill so that it can be put in place when the Social Security COLA is enacted. It is so important that the payments that our veterans, their families, and survivors receive keep pace with inflation and better enable them to put food on the table and roof over their heads. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased that last year's Veterans COLA increase was 3.6% for 2012 and that we can likely expect to increase for 2013. The exact figure will be tied directly to the Social Security COLA, whose benefits will also see the same increase in their payments. As it has been since 1976, Congress, through the passing of the Veterans Cost of Living Adjustment Act, directs the Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs to increase the rate of basic compensation for disabled veterans and the rate of dependency for them, the survivors, and their dependents. This bill will benefit disabled veterans, their families, and their survivors from World War II, era through the current conflict of Iraq and Afghanistan. Many of the over 3.5 million veterans who receive disability compensation benefits depend on these payments not only to provide for their basic needs, but for those of their spouses, children, and parents as well. Without an annual COLA increase, these veterans, their families, and survivors would likely see the value of their hard-earned benefits slowly eroding. Mr. Speaker, I think we would be derelict in our duties if we fail to guarantee that those who sacrifice so much for this country are able to receive benefits and service that keep pace with the needs and inflation. We fund the war. let's fund the warriors. Let me repeat. We fund the wars, let's fund the warriors. I urge my colleagues to support the Veterans Compensation Cost of Living Adjustment Act of 2012, H.R. 4114, without delay. Thank you, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlelady reserves her time. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I yield as much time as he might consume to the subcommittee chairman of the Committee on Disability Assistance and Memorial Affairs, not only the author of this particular piece of legislation, but since coming to this Congress, he has become one of the most ardent supporters of our veterans, Mr. Runyon from New Jersey.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Chairman Miller, thank you for those kind words, and thank you for your support in helping me move this piece of legislation forward. I rise today in support of H.R. 4114, the Veterans Compensation Cost of Living Adjustment Act of 2012. H.R. 4114, which I introduced in February, puts veterans on equal footing with Social Security beneficiaries by increasing the amount provided to several kinds of compensation by the amount of the Social Security cost of living adjustment. These include disabled veterans compensations, veterans clothing allowance, and the DIC for veterans survivors. This annual and non-controversial bill, which has been scored by CBO as having no budgetary impact, is a critical part of ensuring that benefits for disabled veterans and their families are sufficient to meet their needs. I am proud that the first bill I introduced in Congress last year was the Veterans COLA bill, which gave the first cost of living adjustment to our veterans that they had received in several years. I am equally proud that we are doing right by our veterans by moving the COLA bill increase this year in the form of H.R. 4114. I urge all members to support this critical piece of legislation, and I thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from Florida reserves.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance.
The gentlelady from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last month, we honored with the presence of over 400 Moffett Point Marines in the Capitol to receive the Congressional Gold Medal. From 1942 to 1949, almost 20,000 African-American Marines experienced basic training at Camp Moffett Point near the New River in Jacksonville, North Carolina. These heroes fought on two fronts: at home against discrimination and across the sea to defend our nation. This highest civilian award in the United States was first presented during the Revolutionary War to George Washington. It is fitting that this latest reward should go to those men who, years before Jackie Robinson and Rosa Parks, joined the Marines to defend their country. During this week, when we are going to be debating the Affordable Care Act, we need to discuss a project that affects veterans' health in my state of Florida. On July 1, the VA paid an additional $500,000 to rent a portable operating room for a project that is 95% complete in the Miami VA Medical Center. When this renovation was first proposed, two minor projects, each costing $10 million, was sponsored to fulfill the requirements of the project. I visited the medical center last month and heard directly from the administrators of the facility about the project. The planner on the ground soon realized that patients could have been put at risk due to contamination of the operating rooms by the construction on the other side of the room. Veterans' health care was being put at risk, and rather than let this happen, it was decided by those who know the veterans' health the best, those at the health facilities, to combine the project into one and rent the portable operating rooms. We need a procedure to give the Secretary the ability to correct these kinds of projects and not waste taxpayers' money. I will soon be introducing legislation to help the Secretary to give him the help he needs to save taxpayers' money. In the last Congress, our Democratic leadership in the House and the Senate And with President Barack Obama, we was able to pass the largest increase in the veterans' budget in the history. We also passed advanced appropriation for the VA health care so that veterans would not be subject to the deadline that Congress seemed to miss every year to pass a proper budget. It allows the VA to plan for the following year health care needs and reassure veterans that they will be able to get the care that they need. We also passed the Caregivers Law to help those who are taking care of the members of the military, fund PTSD and TBI mental health programs, homeless programs, and rural health care into the veterans' homes. It is the least we can do to those who have given so much to protect our freedom. We did not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. And since we're discussing repeal of the health care law tomorrow, I would like to briefly discuss how, in fact, the Affordable Care Act benefits our nation's veterans and all Americans. Although not a perfect bill, and no bill is since there are many compromises made, this is a perfect start. And attempting to obtain universal health care has been a primary goal of every single president and Congress since the days of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who had fought for quality, accessible health care, insurance reform for all Americans. And now, 75 years later, after the Supreme Court ruling just over a week ago, our nation has finally obtained that goal. Millions of Americans have already come to rely on a wide range and life-saving benefits of the Affordable Care Act. And let me just say, I keep hearing Obama care. Let me just be clear. Obama cares for the American health care. Before Congress passed the Affordable Care Act, nearly 1 in 5 citizens in the wealthiest country in the world had little or no hope of affordable insurance and access to regular health care. When fully implemented, the Affordable Care Act will cover an additional 30 million Americans and 3.8 million African Americans who otherwise would remain uninsured. Already under the Affordable Health Care Act, 17 million children with pre-existing conditions can no longer be denied coverage. 105 million Americans no longer have a lifetime limit on their coverage. 32.5 million seniors received free preventive service in 2011. 54 million Americans in private plans have received free preventive services. 6.6 million young adults up to the age 26 have obtained insurance through their parents' plan. 5.2 million seniors and disabled people save an average of $704 each on their prescription drugs. 360 small businesses receive tax credits to help them afford coverage for 2 million workers. 13 million families who receive insurance premium rebates averaging $151 in 2012. However, instead of debating a health care repeal, we should be debating a construction reauthorization bill to deal with the waste of taxpayer dollars, like I indicated in Miami, $500,000 this month for a portable operating room. In closing, let's get to work, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady yields back her time. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the recognition. I think it's rather interesting that my colleague would talk about the supposed great things that are in the Obamacare bill and not talk about how it's going to be paid for. In fact, the largest tax increase on the American people that this Congress has ever placed on their backs. They would make you believe that it was all free, but it's not. It's going to cost somebody, and that's going to be the American citizens. I also want to talk about the Miami project very quickly. I had to go down and actually visit and then pressure the VA secretary to make sure that the director of the Miami Medical Center left her job because she was not doing what she was supposed to do. And in fact, this was in a way of skirting the rules and the laws by splitting a project into two and then costing the taxpayers of the United States considerably more money, including the cost of the rental of the trailers that are being used as temporary operating rooms. We continue to wait for the Department of Veterans Affairs to actually make an official request for us to come forward and take care of this problem that exists in Miami, specifically because of, I think, poor administrative oversight, not only at the administrative level in Miami, but also with the VISN director in VISN 8 as well. I'm happy at this point to yield back the balance of my time, but I do ask unanimous consent that all members would have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include any extraneous materials that they may have on 4114. I also want to say that, you know, one of the things that my colleague was talking about in regards to the advanced appropriations that most of us in Congress did support, it's a good thing that we did because the Senate itself hasn't been able to pass a budget for almost 4 years, and they cannot pass an appropriation bill on time. So I do support the advanced appropriation that this House supported and ultimately was signed into law. With that, I encourage all members to support 4114, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back his time. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 4114? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chairs, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Missouri seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass Bill H.R. 4367.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 416, H.R. 4367, a bill to amend the Electronic Fund Transfer Act to limit the fee disclosure requirement for an automatic teller machine to the screen of that machine.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Luetkemeyer, and the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Scott, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Missouri.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise, extend their remarks, and to add extraneous material to this bill.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we are considering one of the most common-sense bills seen in some time. This bill provides a real solution to a real problem that is impacting banks, credit unions, and merchants nationwide. Regulation E currently mandates that ATM fee disclosures appear both in physical placard or sticker form on the machine as well as through an on-screen electronic notification. Unfortunately, some individuals have seen the potential to make a quick buck off a frivolous claim and have begun to remove stickers from ATMs across the country, thereby placing financial institutions and merchants out of compliance. This is exactly what's happened to some small financial institutions in my district throughout Missouri. Someone was traveling throughout the state, removing stickers from ATM machines, and then offering to settle with the banks for several $1,000s per machine, or that bank face a lawsuit. The premise of this bill is simple: to eliminate an outdated and unnecessary regulatory burden facing merchants and financial institutions while continuing to ensure consumer protections for all ATM users throughout required on-screen fee disclosures. It is important to recognize that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has also expressed interest in eliminating this duplicative fee disclosure requirement. In December of 2011, the CFPB asked the public to comment on the elimination of this requirement. However, during the public comment period, the CFPB admitted it may not be able to eliminate the duplicative disclosure requirement, and it would be up to Congress to take action. Today, Mr. Speaker, it is time for us to take action. H.R. 4367 is supported by the National Association of Federal Credit Unions, Credit Union National Association, American Bankers Association, Independent Community Bankers Association of America, United States Chamber of Commerce, Electronic Funds Transfer Association, Consumer Bankers Association, the Clearinghouse, the Food Marketing Institute, the Financial Services Roundtable, the National Association of Convenience Stores, the American Gaming Association, and the ATM industry as well. This legislation has broad bipartisan support from its 145 co-sponsors. Among them is the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Scott, who has been a great partner in this initiative, and I thank him for his efforts. Again, Mr. Speaker, I want to remind my colleagues this bill does not in any way alter the mandate for on-screen fee disclosures, meaning that customers will have a clear understanding of what they will be charged before they complete their ATM transaction. Mr. Speaker, it is time to put an end to these frivolous lawsuits. I thank my colleagues for the sponsorship of this legislation and ask for all members to support this bill today. With that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves his time. The gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Scott, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
First of all, Mr. Speaker, let me say that this is a very much bipartisan legislation, sponsored by both Democrats and Republicans. And I am very, very pleased to have as an original co-sponsor on this and work very closely with Mr. Lukemeyer, who's done an admirable job in providing leadership on a much, much needed piece of legislation. And that is House Resolution 4367. And as I said, I'm proud to be an integral part of moving forward a very timely, reasonable, and vital piece of legislation. Let me just say at the outset, Mr. Speaker, that our banking system, our retail system, our credit unions, all sit at the center, at the epicenter of this nation's great economic system, which is going through tremendous challenges as we face. And so, as Mr. Lukemeyer said, we're faced with what basically are scam artists who will go in and remove the labeling from off the ATM machines. And knowing that this penalty is upwards of $500,000, and then to go and to try to bring a class action lawsuit against these financial institutions in very tough economic times. And so this legislation is developed to address this and fix this so that our banking industry, our financial service industry, will not have this threat over them. So what it would do, it would repeal the requirement for both a physical placard as well as an electronic notice on the ATM screen disclosing the transaction fees. Currently, as we work now, if an ATM machine does not display a physical placard, a financial institution, a bank, a credit union, or our retailers can be subject to a class action lawsuit, which would potentially amount to, as I said, $500,000 or 1% of its net worth. Now, this penalty has the potential of prompting bogus lawsuits against financial institutions simply due to a lack of the physical placard, even when the electronic notice is shown to a customer. And perhaps because the placard was removed by a third party, and so you can see that this is not fair for these institutions to be faced with up to $500,000 in penalty fees, especially in these tough economic times. At the same time, many of these institutions continue to struggle to maintain standard operations faced with the current economic climate that we have. And let me just talk about that, Mr. Speaker, for a moment, because there have been 31 bank failures in this country this year alone. And about 3 weeks ago, 3 banks shut their doors, including the Security Exchange Bank in Marietta, in Cobb County, in Georgia, which is located in my district. As a matter of fact, in Georgia alone, 78 banks have closed their doors since our crisis began. Georgia leads the nation, unfortunately, in bank closures. And that's why I am so particularly concerned about it and so pleased to have this measure passed, because this sensible legislation that we consider today would remove the threat of legal action against financial institutions, a bank or credit union, simply for the lack of the physical placard at one of its ATM machines. And passage of this bill, as Mr. Luetkemeyer pointed out, will still provide the consumer with the protections that they need, because a notice informing them of any fees will still be required upon the start of a transaction on the ATM screen. In addition, consumers will still be able to benefit from the convenience that the estimated 445,000 ATMs that are in operation that this country provides. So I'm very proud to have worked on this bill. It's very timely. It's very, very important for our economy that we move with this bill. And the bill certainly deserves the strong bipartisan support that we have. And I urge my colleagues to support this measure today. And again, it's been a pleasure to work with Mr. Luetkemeyer on that. And I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves his time. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's now my distinct honor to welcome to speak on the bill our distinguished chairman of the Financial Services Committee, the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Baucus.
The gentleman from Alabama is recognized.
I appreciate that, Mr. Speaker. And I came here to really compliment the two gentlemen who have spoken on this bill, who are the co-sponsors of a bipartisan bill. When I first heard about this legislation, I thought, well, like most legislation this year, it won't go anywhere. It may pass the House, but it may not pass the Senate. But I understand that this particular legislation, that our Senate colleagues are waiting for it and are ready to act upon it. Mr. Scott brought up, I think, a salient point when he said that we're having many banks who are struggling, credit unions, because when people don't have jobs, they can't pay back their loans. And our banks and credit unions are trying to cope with the added expense of more regulation. But, you know, at a time like that particularly, but at any time, for people to take advantage of a statute that is intended to protect the American people is really audacity and greed in its purest sense. I'm an attorney, and I can tell you that 999 out of 1,000 attorneys or former attorneys would absolutely be enraged to find that a few of their colleagues, a very few, are taking advantage of Reg E and the Electronic Transfer Act to sue these institutions on lawsuits that are totally against the public interest, and particularly are against the interests of those living in low-income areas and high-crime areas. And those areas, the people in those areas are coping with so much. To add to that, having an ATM machine removed from that location or from a low-income area just adds another expense for people who have very little means of financing their life today. And that's what's happening. Either the vandals themselves are going and vandalizing this actually sticker that we've all seen. We've all used an ATM. We've seen a sticker there. We probably didn't notice the sticker because really what really calls our attention is when we get on the screen and we see that same notice, but that notice actually on the screen requires us to affirmatively say, yes, we will agree to it. So people today probably don't even notice that sticker. But the few people who noticed it and took advantage of it were people that were up to no good. people that were willing to bring what some of us would call a frivolous lawsuit, but these lawsuits, they can ask for $500,000 worth of damages. And because it is actually a statutory failure to have it, these lawsuits sometimes result in a $100,000 or $200,000 judgment. They're also resulting in these ATMs not being located in areas that are subject to vandalism. Of course, almost any area could be subject to it. But we penalize those Americans who are least able to afford to travel a greater distance for the convenience of an ATM machine. And as Mr. Lukenmeyer and Mr. Scott said, people come up, they scrape it off, and really some of these appear to be well-organized efforts by the very people that bring the lawsuit to go out and do these in an organized manner among hundreds of machines. And then they come in and file a class action. And in most cases, particularly a small credit union or a community bank, a local bank, Mr. Lukenmeyer at one time was a banker in a small Missouri community. They can't afford to battle these for $50,000 or $100,000, and it may be actually a big law firm bringing these things. So they settle them for $50,000. This will put an end to that. And let me tell you, no one on the Financial Services Committee expressed any doubt about this legislation. I don't think anyone would, other than those people who are complicit in vandalizing these machines and making money on what we sometimes call unintended. I tell you, it certainly was unintended. It was also, if we had in our imagination sat down for days and said, what is the worst thing that could happen by requiring us to put a sticker on as well as electronic notice, we would have never come up with this. We would have never come up with the ingenuity of some people to take advantage of the law. But that's what's happened here. And today, I think unanimously, hopefully, we're going to shut the door on this practice and send this bill over to the Senate. And particularly for areas where there's high vandalism or rural areas. In our rural communities, we're going to set a wrong right. And let me say that this is a model for how this Congress ought to operate, coming together, having a consensus, coming up with good common sense legislation that benefits the public and reduces unnecessary costs and puts really what I consider and I think is criminal behavior out of business. And we're going to put some criminals out of business with this legislation. So, Mr. Lukenmeyer, Mr. Scott, and all members who are co-sponsoring this bill, I commend each and every one of you. Thank you.
The gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from Missouri, you wish to reserve your time?
Yeah.
The gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Certainly in closing, I'd just like to say how important this legislation is. And as the chairman of our Financial Services Committee, Chairman Baucus, just stated, these are sophisticated individuals. These are people who know the system. And that's why I refer to them as scam artists. This is a racket. And it's a racket that we need to put out of business. That's causing tremendous headaches, tremendous difficulties for the heart of our fine economic system, which is our banking system, our commercial system, and this will go a long way in helping to take away a very superfluous but serious enough threat. The other thing about this that's very fine is we hear a great cry among the American people for great bipartisanship. Well, here's a great example of Democrats and Republicans working together for the good of the United States of America. And I have no other speakers, so I will allow you to close. And thank you very much for working with me on this, and I appreciate having the opportunity to work with you.
The gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from Missouri is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, I want to thank Mr. Scott from Georgia for his help in helping this bill along. As he articulated, Georgia's had an inordinate number of banks this past year, 2 or 3 years, that have suffered and have gone out of business, and this is just another situation here where this bill may not be a very big bill in the light of things, but it certainly is. It's going to relieve some stress on some of our institutions, also some exposure for some of our merchants, and I think, as our distinguished chairman articulated, it's time to put some of these folks out of business as well. So I've had, unfortunately, some of these things go on in my district, and this House brought to my attention, but I think we've come together as a group. We had a great meeting the other day in financial services and had strong bipartisan support. We have support in the Senate. With that, I'll just close and ask for the support of the body and yield back the balance of my time.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 4367? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, two-thirds being in the affirmative.
Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Georgia.
On that, I demand the yeas and nays, a recorded vote.
The yeas and nays are requested. All those in favor of taking this vote by the yeas and nays will rise and remain standing until counted. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Washington seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 5892, the Hydropower Regulatory Efficiency Act of 2012.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 404, H.R. 5892, a bill to improve hydropower and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentlelady from Washington, Ms. McMorris Rogers, and the gentlelady from Colorado, Ms. DeGette, each will control 20 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentlelady from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and to exclude extraneous material on H.R. 5982.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentlelady is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong support of H.R. 5892, the Hydropower Regulatory Efficiency Act of 2012, which I introduced along with my good friend from Colorado, Representative Diana DeGette. To see the potential and the benefits of hydropower, all we have to do is look at my home state of Washington, which gets over 75% of its power from clean, reliable hydropower and has some of the nation's lowest electricity rates. The Columbia Snake River dams in eastern Washington, through irrigation, transformed a dry, barren desert with sagebrush to one of the most productive agriculture regions in the world. The low cost of hydropower brought high-tech companies like Google and Yahoo to relocate their servers there. Manufacturing facilities like BMW have now opened plants in Moses Lake. And the significant transportation benefits hydropower infrastructure provides to our nation's barging are all a result of hydropower. Yet, notwithstanding all of these benefits, the regulatory approval process for hydropower development, especially for smaller projects, can be unnecessarily slow, costly, and cumbersome. That's why I authored and I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 5892, which reforms and streamlines the hydropower permitting and regulatory process for small hydropower and conduit projects, reducing the burdens impeding development and getting low-cost electricity to communities faster. Mr. Speaker, few would disagree that we as a nation need to become more energy independent. Along with members on both sides of the aisle, I support an all-of-the-above energy strategy. The Department of Energy has also a goal of doubling the amount of hydropower produced in the United States, which a recent National Hydropower Association study revealed could be accomplished without building a single new dam by simply investing in new technologies and turbines. Mr. Speaker, the benefits and the overwhelming potential is why I urge the President to include hydropower in his all-of-the-above energy strategy. And I'm submitting a copy of the letter I sent to the President to urge him to include hydropower in his energy strategy, and also several other letters of support. As part of an all-of-the-above strategy, we need to domestically produce more oil, coal, natural gas, renewable energies like hydropower. According to the Energy Information Administration, currently 75% of all renewable energy produced in the United States is hydropower. However, that only accounts for 7% of the total electricity nationwide, and we've hardly scratched the surface of hydropower's potential. By utilizing currently untapped resources, the United States could add approximately 60,000 megawatts of new hydropower by 2025. Furthermore, with job growth still at a sluggish pace and far too many Americans out of work, we should be looking at every opportunity to put Americans back to work. Increased hydropower development will do just that, with the potential to create up to 700,000 jobs over the next decade. Unleashing American ingenuity to increase hydropower production will lower energy costs and help create thousands of jobs. Mr. Speaker, I urge all of my colleagues to support American energy and support H.R. 5892. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlelady reserves her time. The gentlelady from Colorado is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you. I'm proud to stand here today with my Western colleague, Ms. Morris Rogers, to speak in support of the Hydropower Regulatory Efficiency Act, H.R. 5892. Both of us realize how important hydropower is towards our country and towards energy and independence. It's the largest source of renewable energy in America today, but as Ms. Morris Rogers said, it's only 3% of our nation's dams that are producing this power. The Hydropower Regulatory Efficiency Act will enable increased electricity production from clean domestic energy sources by removing roadblocks to new hydropower projects. This legislation will create smarter and more efficient permitting processes for hydropower projects across the nation by easing the licensing requirements for small hydroelectric projects. In particular, the bill will allow the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to extend preliminary permits for those projects that have been conducted responsibly and to expand the number of hydropower projects that are exempt from FERC licensing requirements. The bill also directs FERC and the Secretary of Energy to perform studies that will reveal new potential for hydropower production and to increase grid reliability. This legislation will promote growth in our hydropower industry, and it will create new jobs. Since my colleague, Ms. McMorris Rogers, and I began crafting this bill in December of last year, it's advanced with strong bipartisan support every step of the way. This is a testament both to the substance of the bill and to the spirit of everybody who contributed to the process. Members, staff, and stakeholders negotiated constructively and openly to produce this legislation. It's important for us to realize that even in these politically charged times, such collaboration is possible and necessary for us to fulfill our commitment to the American public. I want to thank my colleague across the aisle for her hard work on this bill, and I also want to acknowledge Ranking Member Waxman and Chairman Upton on the Energy and Commerce Committee for their support throughout the process. H.R. 5892 will expand our potential to advance clean energy production and create jobs. I urge all members to vote for this bill. And, Mr. Chairman, if my colleague has no further speakers, I'll yield back the balance of my time. Thank you very much.
The gentlelady yields back her time. The gentlelady from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady yields back her time. The question is, will the House